Hello, hello. In this video, we're going to be focusing on some corner cases of derivations. From a strict logical sense, there's nothing new here, but I'm going to show you some things that maybe you didn't consider because I want you to be able to keep them in your head. Hopefully this should be a fairly short video, and it should be also pretty intuitive. So let's get started. I'm here in tableDerivation.xlsx, and I'm in the Derived Null Equivalent tab, or Derived Null Equiv tab. So the first thing I want to do is do a pretty simple derivation. We're going to do the physical table derivation, right? So I've got the tables in my physical data model up here. There's just one, and it's called mini. And so I'm going to ask for all the visible rows of mini. And for the filter context, I'm going to leave it empty. I'm not going to add any filters to it. So if the filter context is empty, right, when I go get all the visible rows of mini, I end up getting everything, right? And that makes sense. If there's no filters in place, I should just see all the stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select those cells right there. Control-C to copy, click on the O and R's, Control-Alt-V to paste special, click on values and number formats, and hit OK. And that's the result of that derivation right there. Assuming that there's no filters in place, we go ahead and get everything. Okay, that probably makes sense. Now what I want to do, make things a bit more interesting, is I'm going to revise the filters with this filter right here. I'm going to add a filter for shift equals lunch or dinner, right? Oh, I'm going to get rid of these marching ants by hitting escape, by the way, if you want to get rid of the marching ants. Okay, so I'm going to add a filter for shift equals lunch or dinner, and some astute people in the audience might notice there's only two shifts, lunch and dinner. Those are the only two shifts. So I'm about to add a filter that has all the values that could be possible. So what's going to be the effect of that? Well, let's select this, drag this up here. I'm going to drag it right above the shift column. You can kind of put it anywhere. I'm going to put it right here. Let go, right? And when I do, right, we're going to use this physical table derivation right here, which is one of our respectful derivations. So it's going to respect any filters in the filter context. So what we need to do is we need to change this physical table so that it looks the way that it would to this derivation right here. So we have to basically respect this filter. So let's go ahead and do that. So here under Shift, I'm going to click this down arrow, right? And to do this trick, we're going to have to come down here to text filters and do custom filter, right? Again, we're trying to simulate DAX in Excel, and sometimes it works better than others. Okay, so what is our filter here? What basically we're saying is shift has to either equal lunch or it can equal dinner. Okay, now what do you think is going to happen when I hit OK right here? I bet you've got a guess. Nothing will happen, right? We've technically added a filter here. We're respecting that filter, but the filter of these two values right here is the equivalent of having no filter at all. So if you add a filter for a column that contains all the values of that column, right, all of them, well then that's the equivalent of not having a filter. So when we do this derivation, right, go get all the physical rows in mini, even though we've got a filter in there, we're going to get the same result as if we had no filters at all. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select those, Control-C to copy, click down here under the O and R's, Control-Alt-V to paste special, click on values and number formats, hit OK, and we simulate deriving that temp table right there with this derivation. So even though there's a filter in the filter context, because that filter contains all the values of the column, right, it's the equivalent of having no filter at all. Speaking of which, let's do this one more time just to make sure we get it, right? We're going to add a filter for type equals to go or dine in. Well, if we look at our type column here, those are the only two types, right? So we're about to add a filter that has all the values of that column. So let's see what it does. So let's go ahead and select this. We're going to drag it up here. And I'm not going to put it right here. I'm going to put it right here just so these aren't right next to each other. And let go. All right, cool. So now, scroll down to problem 3 here. We're about to derive all the visible rows of mini. And since that's a physical table derivation, which is one of our respectful derivations, we need to adjust this physical table in the data model so that it respects all the filters. Well, we've already got the filter for shift equals lunch or dinner. Let's go ahead and add a filter for type equals to go or dine in. And you already see where this is going, but we're going to do it anyways because you have to start thinking like this, okay? So let's go to text filters. Let's go to custom filter. And so we're only going to show rows where the type is equal to go or it's equal to dine in. Be sure to get the capitalization right, okay? And now when we hit OK, nothing happens. Okay, so we've added two filters to our filter context, which is affecting our respectful derivations, but because those filters have all the values of the column, it's the equivalent of having no filters at all. right? So if you've got a filter in the filter context and you replace it with a filter that has all the values, it's going to be the equivalent of just not having any filters on that particular column. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our derivation. We want all the visible rows of mini. This filter is being applied and this filter is being applied. They have no effect, but they are being applied. So we're going to go ahead and select these cells right there. Control C to copy. Click under the O in hours. Control Alt V to paste special. Click on values and number formats. Hit OK. And we've derived our temp table. So we've used this derivation, which gets all the visible rows of mini, which produces this temp table right here. Cool. Okay, so what I'm trying to communicate here is if you've got a filter in the filter context that has all the values of a column, it is the equivalent of not having a filter at all. They produce the same results. Okay, so we're going to follow the instructions here. We're going to stop and reset the filter context to be empty. If you look real close here, here it's on cell K9 on mine. Right to the bottom right-hand side of our filter context, I've got this little orange cell right there. This is going to be our eraser. So go ahead and click on that. Control C to copy. And select these cells here. Select all your filters. Control V to paste. That's going to be our Excel way of clearing the filters in the filter context. Okay, and so with that in mind, let's go ahead and clear both of these filters just to get it back to our starting place. So clear filter from type. Yep. And we're going to clear filter from shift, just to start off with a nice empty filter context. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to add this filter and this filter. Shift equals lunch and dish equals salad. And before I do, I want to point out that we only sold one salad. Maybe people should be eating healthier, but they're not. We only sold one salad, and we sold it at dinner, right? So we're going to add a filter for shift and salad. What do you think is going to happen? Hi, Brian, I can already see over here. Well, all right. It's fine. But take a guess in your head. What do you think is going to happen? Okay, let's go ahead and do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and select that cell right there, or those cells. And we're going to drag this up here, and we're going to put this right above the shift column, right? And while we're at it, well, actually, let's create the respect right now. So we're going to imagine what this table derivation looks like given this filter. So let's go ahead and add a filter for shift equals lunch. Just uncheck dinner and hit OK. All right, so we got one more to add, though. Let's add this filter for salad. And notice there's not any salads in there because we're just looking at lunch. Well, let's see what happens. So I'm going to select this and drag it up here. And I'm going to drag it right on top of the dish column and let go, right? Now, if I try and click on this, notice how I can't select salad and nothing else. We're going to have to simulate this by going to text filters and going to equals. And we want just the rows where the dish is equal to salad. And when we hit OK, what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to see everything? No, we're going to see absolutely nothing, right? So if that's the case, if we were to derive all the visible rows of mini under this filter context, again, this is a respectful derivation, we would end up getting back 0 rows, or a null table, a table that has no rows in it. So we would get back these columns, but how many rows are in the table? Absolutely none, okay? So it's entirely possible, in fact, fairly common when you're manipulating the filters, to set the filters in such a way that when you go to get a table, you end up not getting any rows back, which is perfectly fine. I just want you to see that that is indeed what happens. Okay, so we're going to stop and reset the filters again, right? So I'm going to click right here, grab my little eraser, right? So be sure and grab this little slightly orange cell right there. It's K9 on mine. Control C to copy. Oh, K9, that's easy to remember. Select those, Control V to paste. So we're going to clear all the filters in the filter context. So we're going to clear this one, and we're also going to clear this one, get back to normal. Okay. And so our last filter, which is kind of hard to think about, but it's worth thinking about, is this one right here. We're about to revise the filters with this temp table, which has the column shift and has no values in it, right? There are 0 rows in this temp table, which is perfectly possible, right? So you can imagine that maybe we got all the shifts using the all derivation, then we filtered it down to just the shifts that equaled brunch, right? And when we got back all the true rows, well, none of them were equal to brunch, so we ended up getting back 0 rows. So let's see what happens if we drag this into the filter context. We're going to kind of have to fake this a little bit. So I'm going to drag this right here, right? So if I have a filter for shift equals does not equal anything, right? What's going to be the effect of that? Right? If that is the case, it's kind of hard to fake it here in Excel, but let's just try it. I'm going to click right here. We're going to cheat a little bit. Go ahead and do equals. And here, just go ahead and type in nothing, which isn't quite accurate, but I think you'll sort of get the idea, right? There is no value that that shift could be that would allow it to be visible. So if we go ahead and hit OK, right? If we have a filter for shift can't be anything, well then we only keep the rows where the shift isn't anything. And if that's the case, we get back 0 rows. So if we were to derive all the visible rows of mini in this filter context, we would get back a null table once again, a table with 0 rows in it. Now you may think to yourself, I'm never ever going to do this, which is completely untrue. You're going to do this all the time. Usually by accident, you're going to use some DAX to filter down a temp table that you're going to use as a filter, and accidentally you're going to filter it down in such a way that that temp table has 0 rows. And when you try and do calculations, right, you're going to find that you get back a bunch of blanks because the filter that you've added goes ahead and makes all the rows invisible in your data model. So I just wanted to see that that is something that can and will happen to you inside of DAX. So just go ahead and be ready for it. Okay, that's it. That's all we've got for the corner cases. Let's go ahead and move on to the next video.